Welcome. We are about to begin a detailed review of the mechanisms of bacterial pathogenesis. Our goal is to dissect the entire process, from the pathogen's initial contact with a host all the way through to the manifestation of clinical disease. Let us begin.
Our discussion will follow the logical sequence of an infection. We'll start with core concepts, then move to transmission and the required infective dose. From there, we'll examine establishment via adhesion and invasion, followed by survival strategies against the immune system. We'll then analyze the pathology caused by bacterial toxins and conclude with a summary of the entire pathogenic cascade.
All right, let's first establish our foundational terminology. A precise understanding of two key terms, pathogenicity and virulence, is absolutely essential for everything that follows. Now, pay close attention to this distinction. Pathogenicity is a qualitative binary concept. It's simply the ability to cause disease. You can think of it as an on-off switch. A species is either pathogenic or it is not. Virulence, however, is a quantitative measure. It describes the degree of harm, the severity of the disease. It's more like a dial that can be turned up or down and can vary significantly, even between strains of the same species. It's important to understand that virulence is not a fixed property. It can be modulated. We have exaltation, which is the enhancement of virulence, often demonstrated experimentally by passing a pathogen through a series of susceptible hosts. On the other side, and of immense clinical importance, we have attenuation, the reduction of virulence. This principle is, of course, the foundation for many live vaccines, where we weaken a pathogen so it can elicit an immune response without causing significant disease.
Moving on, let's address the initial steps required to establish an infection, transmission, and the concept of the infective dose. In other words, how does the pathogen enter the host, and how many organisms are required?
This matrix summarizes the primary routes of transmission. A critical concept to grasp here is the route dependency rule. While some pathogens are versatile, many are highly specialized. The classic example is Vibrio cholerae. If ingested, it causes devastating disease. But if you were to inject it subcutaneously, it's essentially harmless. For many pathogens, the route is everything. So what is the infective dose? It's simply the minimum number of bacilli required to initiate a disease process. And as you can see, this threshold varies enormously among pathogens. An organism like Shigella, for example, can cause disease with as few as 10 cells. Others require a much larger inoculum, a critical mass, to successfully overwhelm the host's immediate defenses. So, the pathogen has been transmitted in sufficient numbers. The next challenge is to establish a foothold. This process involves two critical, sequential steps: adhesion to host surfaces, followed by invasion into deeper tissues. Adhesion is the first crucial event. Bacteria utilize specific structures, such as the fimbriae, shown here, which act like grappling hooks to bind to host cell receptors. This prevents them from being cleared by mechanical forces, like mucus flow or urination, and provides a stable platform from which to launch an invasion. Now, invasion is not a passive process. It's an active biochemical assault. Pathogens secrete a range of enzymes that act as virulence factors. For example, hyaluronidase degrades the hyaluronic acid that cements our cells together. Streptokinase dissolves fibrin clots that the body forms to wall off an infection. And some produce IgA proteases, which specifically cleave the antibodies that protect our mucosal surfaces. Once established within the host tissues, the pathogen now faces its greatest challenge: surviving the host immune response. Let's examine the sophisticated strategies bacteria employ to evade destruction. For extracellular bacteria, survival often comes down to avoiding phagocytosis. We can categorize their strategies into three main types. First, the armor, a thick polysaccharide capsule that makes it physically difficult for phagocytes to engulf them. Second, the camouflage, using cell wall proteins like protein A in Staphylococcus aureus to bind antibodies backwards and prevent opsonization. And third, the counterattack, secreting cytotoxins that directly kill the approaching phagocytes. Other pathogens utilize an entirely different strategy. They hide inside host cells, and once inside a phagocyte, they have three primary mechanisms for survival. They can inhibit the fusion of the phagosome with the lysosome, effectively disarming the cell. Some are simply resistant to the lysosomal enzymes and can survive within the harsh phagolysosome environment. And others manage to escape the phagosome altogether, replicating freely within the nutrient-rich cytoplasm. This leads us to a very important clinical distinction between two types of intracellular pathogens. On one hand, we have the obligate intracellular bacteria, like Rickettsia and Chlamydia.
These organisms can only replicate inside a host cell. On the other hand, we have facultative intracellular bacteria, such as Salmonella typhi and Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which are more versatile and can survive and replicate both inside and outside of host cells. We now arrive at the final stage of pathogenesis, the mechanisms of host damage. A significant portion of the pathology observed in bacterial diseases is directly mediated by potent bacterial toxins. This table, comparing endotoxins and exotoxins, is exceptionally high yield. You must know these differences. Note the key distinctions. Endotoxins are lipids, specifically part of the gram-negative cell wall, and they are heat-stable. Exotoxins, in contrast, are proteins, actively secreted by living bacteria, and are typically heat-labile. These fundamental differences in their chemical nature, source, and stability are critical. Let's focus on the endotoxin cascade. The biologically active component is lipid A, a part of the lipopolysaccharide, or LPS, found in the outer membrane of all gram-negative bacteria. When these bacteria die and lyse, lipid A is released, which acts as a potent trigger for a massive systemic inflammatory response. This leads to the clinical syndrome of septic shock, characterized by fever, severe hypotension, and disseminated intravascular coagulation, or DIC. Now, unlike the non-specific inflammatory cascade of endotoxin, exotoxins are highly specific, precision-guided weapons. This first category includes toxins that inhibit host protein synthesis, like diphtheria toxin, which shuts down cellular machinery at the ribosomal level. Another group directly disrupts cell membranes, like the alpha toxin of Clostridium perfringens, which is a phospholipase that degrades cell membranes and causes a massive tissue necrosis. The second group of exotoxins includes potent neurotoxins. Tetanus and botulinum toxins are the classic examples. Tetanus toxin blocks the release of inhibitory neurotransmitters, leading to spastic paralysis. Botulinum toxin does the opposite, blocking acetylcholine release at the neuromuscular junction, causing a flaccid paralysis. Then we have superantigens. These toxins bypass normal antigen presentation and cause a massive, nonspecific activation of T cells, leading to a cytokine storm and toxic shock syndrome. The final category of exotoxins are those that manipulate host cells' signaling pathways, particularly in the gut. The classic example is choleratoxin. It permanently activates an enzyme that increases intracellular cyclic AMP. This, in turn, causes intestinal epithelial cells to secrete enormous quantities of water and electrolytes into the lumen of the gut, resulting in the profound, life-threatening secretory diarrhea characteristic of cholera. To conclude, let us synthesize these individual stages into a single, cohesive pathway, the pathogenesis cascade. This diagram consolidates the entire sequence into 4 distinct phases. First is the breach, entry into the host with a sufficient infective dose. Second is the anchor, using adhesion mechanisms to establish a persistent colonization. Third is the shadow, employing a variety of strategies to evade the host immune response. And finally, the strike, the release of toxins, endotoxin or exotoxins that cause direct tissue damage and clinical disease. As you can see, bacterial pathogenesis is a highly orchestrated multi-step process, not a single event. As you review this material, consider the clinical implications of each step. And I'll leave you with this question for further thought. Considering this entire cascade, which stage offers the most viable and promising target for developing future therapeutic interventions?